From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, September the 10th, 2025. Elizabeth Tsurkov, the Israeli student who has been held in Iraq for the last 2.5 years, has been released and is expected back home in Israel today. Tsurkov, who also holds Russian citizenship, was a graduate student at Princeton doing research in Iraq when she was kidnapped in March of 2023, widely believed to have been carried out by the Kataib Hezbollah militia, claiming she was spying for Israel, a charge that was firmly rejected. Her release follows ongoing efforts from Israel and the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump announced her release last night, noting her sister is a U.S. citizen. Trump also called in that same post for terror group Hamas to release the hostages. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he spoke with Tsurkov's mother and sister, saying, "I told them that the entire people of Israel was happy to see her return home." Netanyahu also committing to bring home the hostages being held in Gaza. Israel's President Isaac Herzog said he was moved to hear of Tsurkov's release, saying, "May we soon hear good news as well about the 48 hostages still being cruelly held in the hell of captivity in Gaza." The hostages held by terror group Hamas in Gaza have now been captive for 705 days. The IDF today said it struck military targets belonging to the Houthi terrorist regime in the areas of Sana'a and Al-Jawif in Yemen, including military camps in which it gathered intelligence and planned and executed terrorist attacks against Israel, saying the strikes were conducted in response to repeated attacks by the Iranian-backed Houthis, including launching UAVs and surface-to-surface missiles toward Israeli territory. The latest attacks just yesterday. And the IDF said today that it has begun an effort to warn the civilian population in Gaza City to evacuate areas designated as dangerous ahead of its operation there. Turning now to remarks made today by President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, made during her State of the Union address to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, where she announced actions against Israel over the war in Gaza. She said what is happening in Gaza has shaken the conscience of the world, and that the European Union would be putting our bilateral support to Israel on hold without affecting civil society or Yad Vashem, she said, and announced a partial suspension of the association agreement on trade-related matters with Israel, among other steps. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar called von der Leyen's remarks regrettable, saying some of them are also tainted by echoing the false propaganda of Hamas and its partners. He said once again Europe conveys the wrong message that strengthens Hamas and the radical axis in the Middle East, noting that the main point missing from the president's statement was that the suffering in Gaza is entirely the work of Hamas, who started the war with its invasion of Israel and the October 7th massacre. The American Jewish Committee said the difficult humanitarian situation and the suffering of Palestinian civilians are heartbreaking, but the responsibility for this crisis lies first and foremost with Hamas, saying that appeasing terror is not the answer. Well, more now on the anti-Israel pledge signed by reportedly over 3,000 members of the film industry in Hollywood and beyond, who vowed not to work with Israeli film institutions and festivals that they claim are implicated in genocide and apartheid against the Palestinian people. The Anti-Defamation League called this nothing less than a cowardly, discriminatory action against the Jewish state. CEO Jonathan Greenblatt saying it's one thing to acknowledge Palestinian suffering and express your hopes for the war to end. But he said, how about using your celebrity status to pressure Hamas to actually treat Gazans with humanity and release the innocent hostages? Boycotting Israelis in the film industry only widens the divides you seek to narrow. And the ADL today released a new report together with the Academic Engagement Network on anti-Semitism and anti-Israel bias in higher education. 209 Jewish identifying U.S.-based faculty members were surveyed for the report, which found that their own faculty colleagues and institutional staff are a prominent source of anti-Semitism on university campuses. Jonathan Greenblatt saying Jewish educators and researchers are being excluded from professional opportunities and told by their own colleagues what constitutes anti-Semitism, even as they experience it firsthand. He said universities must ensure that faculty members are never marginalized based on their identity. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Wednesday, September the 10th. At 7 o'clock, David Harris speaks with British journalist Melanie Phillips. At 7:30, Rabbi Ammiel Hirsch delivers his weekly sermon to the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue. At 8, Dr. Charles Asher Small speaks with Natan Sharansky and Dr. Benjamin Chavis Jr. at the 2025 ISGAP-Oxford Summer Institute. At 9, Kenneth Feinberg is on L'chaim. At 10, it's a replay of Rabbi Hirsch, followed by a replay of the news. And coming up next, it's Thinking Out Loud. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, September the 10th, 2025. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.